Okay, this is the second half of the video to do with last Thursday's class, which we missed on account of foul weather. And the previous video we did a bit of a review of object-oriented programming and then added a couple of more concepts onto it. This one I'm going to show you where our project is to date. And I'm going to start off by running it, and we'll have a quick look. It doesn't look much different than it did before. If we click on a picture, it pops up into the page. You'll see that I've centered the image a little bit more. The file name is still at the top. And now instead of having a basic text link down at the bottom, we've got a button which says Get EXIF Data. So if I click on that, the background goes gray, and then this pop-up or modal window slides down from the top, giving us our EXIF data. We can still see the picture in behind, but now we see the data that we previously had in a brand new page in a pop-up modal window. And we have a close button in the upper right hand corner of our modal window. If we hover over it, it turns black. If we click on it, it closes. And this will happen for any of our images. Some of our images don't actually have any EXIF data in them, so when you click on them, we actually get, in some cases, an error popping up. We'll fix that before the end of the course. So let's take a look at some of the changes that I've made to the code here. I'm going to start off with the CSS file because it's a good portion of it is CSS, and you'll see here some stuff that looks familiar. The trans p box round, the trans p box round large, and a resize horizontal, which resizes our image. But now we see a CSS style called Modal, and you'll see that it says the modal background. Now our window that pops up and gives us our data is called a modal window, but this is the background. This is what turns the background of our image gray. And let me just bring that up. So if I click on this, you'll see the background goes gray, and then our pop-up pops into place. And that's what this does here. It says display none. It's hidden by default unless it's hidden unless called for. Its position is fixed, so it stays in one place. Z-index means that it's on top. Padding 100 pixels. Left 0, so we're at the extreme left of the screen to start off with, and the extreme top of the screen, but we're taking up 100% of the width and the height of the screen. And we enable scroll if needed, and then the background colors. And then here we have modal content. This is the actual pop-up window, so that's this that we're looking at here where it says EXIF data. Position is relative. Background color is kind of a whitish or an off-white color. Margin is automatic. No padding. It has a 1 pixel black border. And then the corners of this window are rounded by 10 pixels. The width of the box is 50%, so in other words it takes up 50% of our window. If I was to resize this, you see that it keeps shrinking, and it'll always stay at 50% of our browser window. Box shadow. We've set up a shadow underneath the box. You can see it down here around the edges. And it has an animation associated with it. And these are the settings for the animation. And then down here we have our close button. It's white, it floats to the right, so on the right hand side of the window. The font size is 28 and it's bold. You hover over it, it turns black. There are no decorations in the text, no shadow, anything, no strike through or underline. And then we have the header box, the Modal's header, which is this at the top where xcf is, so we're setting this to a darker gray. And then the footer is the same thing. And you'll notice the border radius is set here to 10, 10, and 0, 0. This means that it has a curved top, but not a curved bottom, so it matches our background window here. If I were to say all 4 is 10, then we would have a curve down here at the bottom as well. And then the same with the footer, except that now the top is flat and the bottom is curved. And then this is some of our older data. But I want to take a quick look at the page source, and some of it will look fairly familiar to you. We go down here, we don't really see much. This is all pretty much the same. But if I click on an image and then look at the page source, there's our camera data, and here's some div tags for our modal box. It goes right in the page for the enlarged image. And then down here we have some JavaScript. The variable, we're setting a variable here. This is just exactly like going $variable equals 1 or $variable equals hello world. So var modal equals document, so this is our document. Get an element by ID, my modal. You'll see up here a div ID called my modal. So what this is doing is it's getting everything that's in here. We have a button called my button, and so on click, what it does is it basically launches our modal window with the first button, and then it will close when we click on the close. Let's go in and look at some of the changes I made in the code. A lot of things are still the same, but up here in the let's open up the configuration file. You'll see that what I've done is I've put a directory name variable up here called images, and what I've done if we go into the WAMP directory and under unit 9, which is where I've put this, you'll see I now have a directory called images, and none of our graphics, our pictures, are in here anymore. This is where they were through the duration of the project up to this point, but it's not necessarily best practice to put what you're displaying in the same directory as the script that's displaying it. So we go into images, here's all of our graphics. So here we're looking in the images folder, and again here's our iterator that we had before. I've just taken it out of the main code and moved it into config.php. And again, we require it once. I'm not going to go through everything in here, just what I've changed. So here's the big change. The display full size and the file name. So we pass our file name through the link. If I hover over it, you'll see down at the bottom of the page localhost /unit9/unit9_2.php ?data, which has the file name in it. And we take our directory name, which will have images in it and all of the files that it contains, and then we print our HTML header, our standard header, to make the web server and the browser realize that it's a standard web page. And then here, this basically just prints our file name just as it did before. Let's shrink this over a little bit. But now here where we displayed our image, we look here, we click, here's our image. This is coming from this line of code here. Whereas before it simply contained the file name, now it contains a directory name as well. So we have the directory name, which is images, and we have the file name. And if you look in here, this is where this is put into our image source HTML tag with a slash to indicate that the first part is a folder, the second part is a file name. Now here you will see another change. You see button ID equals my button, my BTN, my button, get exif data. This is this here where it says get exif data, and then the close tag. So this right here generates a button underneath of our image. I'm using a deprecated tag here for centering it underneath the image. I would normally do this with a little bit of CSS, and it probably will, or maybe will, before we finish up, which is only 2 weeks away. So down here we start into the display of the modal data. Now this is again buried right in our page here, whereas it used to be a separate routine that we called. When we clicked on the link at the bottom, it brought up a separate page which displayed our exif data. And then down here, this is the same as before. File name equals directory name, and then we cat in a slash and then put the file name there. So the directory name, a slash, and the file name. And then here we're grabbing the exif data, which is done right here. This is the same as previously. I haven't changed anything in it. And then here we have to improve this because it's not working very well, but it says if our exif data is empty, simply print no header information and then exit. But if it's not, then we print the exif data, the subset of it. Exif contains much more data than this, but this is just a teeny bit of data that we're displaying here. And then end the modal. Now all of this in here is for the purpose of displaying this pop-up. And then here's our close script tag. And then down here what I've done is I've inserted the JavaScript into some PHP down here so that it can be between an opening and closing delimiter without having to open, close, open, close. That's just the way I do it. You don't necessarily have to do it the same way that I do, as long as the code actually works. Now nothing else has changed here from when we've looked at it previously, so I'm not going to cover everything. This will be available on the SourceForge site as of tonight, so you can grab it, look around, go to the php.net site or W3 Schools and look at some of the information in it. If you have any questions, you can ask me this Thursday.